Cymra Hashiv and Jew, Smishi Bruce Fummey. Haha! Now, some of the folk who watch this channel have asked about Gaelic language learning. So today, I'm going to tell you some stories about my experiences trying to learn Gaelic, the advantages and disadvantages of different methods, and how you can have fun, meet people, see beautiful scenery, learn quickly, cheaply, and start learning Gaelic today, even if you don't live in Scotland. Now, if that seems like a tall order, stick with me to the end. I'll show you some stuff. I'm not a native or a fluent Gaelic speaker. In fact, I'm rubbish. Ach ha becyn Gaelic acham. Agus faclan gwylio'r irson becyn corag. See, it was rubbish. Normally I make videos about the people, places and events in Scottish history. And if that interests you, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right hand side of the screen. But in the meantime, let me tell you my story. I always end my videos by saying Hami Dochas can be la malai. Some people might argue that I should say Hami Dochas can be la ma akav. Somebody said Hami Dochas can be la ma gaiv. But I've had t-shirts, hoodies and mugs made, so I'm not going to change it now. In fact, if you fancy a mug like this or a t-shirt or whatever, you can get them and a translation in my shop below this video, or in the white tab up there, or there'll be a link in the description below. When people ask why I started learning Gaelic, I normally explain how I was in the Bridge of Allen library, and I told the librarian that I was going on a trip to the Hebrides, and she pointed to a door, which I obviously obediently walked through, expecting to find books on the Hebrides. What I actually found was a Gaelic language class. Now, in a situation like that, a confident, self-assured person would have said, "Oh, sorry, excuse me, I've made a mistake, turn and left." What I did was enrolled in the Stirling Council Agile Education Programme. As I sat down, I noticed that one of the other class members was an ex-boss of mine. Nightmare! Not only did I inadvertently have to learn Gaelic, now I had to be the best in the class. Anywho, the classes were fun and it was a good introduction to learning Gaelic. Hami fuair, hami fluch, hami ski, shinasasa sarine. Do you know what I mean? I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm tired. It was the English that did it. It's basically all the essentials you need for learning any language. Now, the advantages of these small, informal, weekly classes are you build up a relationship with the tutor until she dingies you on Facebook, obviously. It becomes part of your social week. There's space for discussion questions and clarifications, and you probably get some input into what you're interested in learning, depending on the flexibility of the tutor. Anyway, the point is that if there are small, relaxed, informal classes like this near you, how no join? Incidentally, I'd be interested to know, have you ever, even for a fleeting moment, thought about learning Gaelic? Or do you have advice for somebody who does want to learn? Tell me in the comment section below. Am I preaching to the converted or the disinterested? The disadvantage of these classes is that you're committed to be at a certain place at a certain time each week. For me, it was a Thursday evening. Now that wasn't particularly good because for a stand-up comic, they are work hours. So I only got to 2.5 of the first 10 classes. That made it kind of difficult to be top of the class, right? So I was looking for a way to catch up before the next 10-week course of classes, and I discovered week-long short courses at Sol Morostig, the Gaelic College in Skye. If you want to learn Gaelic in the Hebrides, meet people from around the world, make a holiday of it, see beautiful scenery, you can, oh, there's a bar, right? Go there, do it, it's brilliant. It's on the southern end of Skye, it's about 2 miles from the ferry port, and Sol Morostig, it blew my mind, I loved it, right? They run these week-long short courses during the Easter and the summer holidays, and they're courses, they've got various levels of courses, right? You can progress through the levels each time you go back, that you move up a level, and you get to go to Skye and live on a student campus. It's just like, but without the sex or the angst. It was exactly like my student days. Although to be fair, at college I did have a lot of angst. Mainly about a lack of sex. What I'm saying is that if you're worried about not getting any, it's better to worry about it in Gaelic. Seriously, Solomon Rostig is a genuine de-stressor. It's a fantastic way to spend a week. You meet people. It's not hugely expensive. I went on boat trips to Knoydart, visits to Glendonnen Castle. There's a canteen where you can practice your newfound Gaelic over lunch. There's evening get-togethers where you can practice your Gaelic. On the Thursday, there's a Ceilidh, Thursday night Ceilidh, and there's a pub. Are you hearing me? There's a pub. And it's really international. I met folk from all over the world. Obviously there are Scottish people as well, but I'm just saying it's not only for Scottish people. I think I went up for week-long holidays in Skye 8 times. I genuinely can't recommend it enough. Advantages. This is the most sociable, fun way to learn Gaelic in a beautiful setting and a kind of holiday environment. For me, the disadvantage is that the courses tend to fill up quickly and certain courses run certain weeks. So the course that you want might not necessarily fit into your schedule. Obviously there's a bit of travel as well to get there, but it's genuinely worth it. The other problem is when a week finishes, right? I remember crossing the ferry back to Mallaig, driving off, and then I stopped about an hour down the road at Glenfinnan. You know the viaduct Harry Potter, and there's the monument at Glenshiel where Bonnie Prince Charlie raised his standard. Anyway, I went into the wee coffee place, and as soon as I did, I was suddenly back in the English-speaking world. Talk about coming down to earth with a bang. I suddenly remembered I wasn't getting enough sex. I tell you what, I wasn't half as worried as the bloke that served me coffee. Still, what about when your week-long immersive course is finished? I'm going to leave a link in the description to a couple of podcasts that you can get on BBC Radio and Gael. Now, you can get these internationally as well, I believe, so you've got no excuse no matter where you are. Rory McLean does a short podcast called Leitcher Dúlach Gaunsagach. It means letter to learners. It's a wee 5-minute story every Sunday night. Now, if you haven't watched my video about the fall of Clan MacGregor and the Battle of Glenfruin, then you should. I'll leave a link at the end. The first time I heard about this battle was on one of Rory McLean's podcasts. There's a translation and an explanation of some grammar points, but even without the grammar points, right, just knowing what it says and listening and repetition makes it sink in eventually. If you've got a basic Gaelic and you've got dead time in the day, when you're driving to work, when you're out for a jog, when your man's going on about the football. I had a waterproof MP3 player, and when I went swimming, I just listened as I lapped the pool, right? So use the dead time through the week. Gradually, your understanding improves, and of course, the next week, you get a new wee story. There's a more basic version called Leitcher Vec, which means little letter, right? So, there's no excuse. Advantages. Where you want, when you want, and fit it in to lift you from monotonous tasks. I'm struggling to think of disadvantages. Although you probably need a little bit of basic Gaelic to start with Leitcher Vec. But if you're in the UK, then you can always get that basic Gaelic from BBC Ulpan's TV programme Speaking Our Language. If you can't get it live at the time you're watching this, BBC iPlayer. Also went to conversation groups. Depending on where you live, there might be a conversation group near you where you can just pop in and sit down and chat or even just listen. Conversation groups are informal, social, some of them are in pubs. The disadvantage is you probably need to have a bit of Gaelic under your belt. You probably also want to get on with other people in the group, right? Because it's social chit chat and some people can be... Anyway. I was working as a stand-up comic, so I had more flexibility. But my first job had been as a physics teacher, and I was still on a substitute teaching list, which was great. You see, there's an island in the Hebrides called Islay. It had and still has stunning scenery, 3,500 inhabitants, and 9 whisky distilleries. That's a distillery for every 400 people. If you wanted to shake a stick at whisky, you couldn't. There's too much in it. Islay has Scotland's most miserable dogs. Every time they go out for a walk, they're jumping up and down, waiting for their owners to throw a stick. But, I mean, sometimes the owners will pick up a stick and then they'll look down at the dog and go, "I'm sorry, Lucky. I can't even shake it. How am I going to throw it? Now, international viewers might not have heard the phrase more of something than you can shake a stick at. You might be a wee bit confused and you didn't quite understand that last stupid joke. Don't worry. Some of you have heard the phrase more stupid jokes than you can shake a stick at. Like me, the first time you heard it, you thought, that expression doesn't even make sense. When was stick shakeability ever a measure of quantity? You would have understood the joke, but you maybe have fixated on a lack of logic in the phrase, and that blocked communication. But of course, there were others who didn't care that the phrase more natural learners than you can shake a stick at was meaningless in itself. You just accepted it without analysis, understood it, and moved on. And learning Gaelic doesn't need academic analysis, just acceptance, time, and repetition. Anyway, I joined the list of substitute teachers in Argyll and Bute because I wanted to be in an environment where there was more Gaelic than mainland Scotland and more whiskey than you can shake a stick at. You get that? You're learning already. It's easy. So there was me, a half Scottish, half African stand-up comic, going to Hebridean Island to teach maths in the local high school in order to learn Gaelic. Exotic. And I ended up sharing a house with a Sikh from London who was teaching English on a Hebridean island whilst writing a novel. Now, it turns out he was a complete arsehole, but the point is, if there was ever a house that deserved Arts Council funding, it was ours. But it doesn't end there, because the Gaelic teacher in the school was an American from Maine who had learned to speak Gaelic in Nova Scotia, and he was now teaching kids on a Hebridean island to speak Gaelic. How messed up is that? I went to some Gaelic classes on Islay. It was called Ulpan. I believe it's based on a methodology that was used to reinvigorate Hebrew when Israel, right? Involves a lot of group repetition and rote learning. No questions, just repeat, and eventually it's supposed to fall into place. I'll be honest, I didn't like it. The advantage is that it's a uniform way to teach consistently throughout the country with volunteer tutors who aren't necessarily language teachers. The downside is that to deliver a consistent level of course is quite rigid and structured. It wasn't for me, but if it's your only option, go for it, right? The school library had lots of Gaelic language books for teenagers, which was great because the language is relatively simple. Some had CDs that went with them. So just like Leitcher Vec and Leitcher Luchgaunsig, I read books and then listened to them in the car. There's quite a lot. You get audio book versions, you get them online or in the Gaelic bookshop in Partick in Glasgow. Studies show that you learn a language just by hearing it, even without classes, and it's got 100% success rate. If that sounds unlikely, think about it. That's how 100% of the world learns its first language. Time, repetition, and occasionally pooping your pants. In fact, I remember one Ulpan class, it doesn't matter. But remember, there was a guy in Islay from Maine teaching the kids Gaelic, right? Now, I used to meet him in a pub once a week for a chat, and he would correct my Gaelic. But I'm going to tell you what, in my experience, was the best way to learn Gaelic. There should be a picture of a guy called Finlay coming up on the screen. He lives in Bucky. He's quite a character. More importantly, he offers one-to-one or small group total immersion Gaelic classes. I went to his house each day for a week where we only spoke Gaelic, apart from lunchtime where he lets you speak English and gives you a chocolate biscuit. I went several times and we went out and about and we did stuff, but always in Gaelic. And my progression and improvement with Finlay was more than anything else I ever did. If your sole objective is to progress as fast as possible and you've got the money to do it, then this is definitely the way to go. But there are downsides. The main one being that compared to Solomon Ostig, including your accommodation, because you've got to go and live in Bucky and it's not student accommodation, it's more expensive. And there's not the same evening social life. At the time I've been working 2 jobs, but if I have the cash again, I would definitely go back to Bucky to spend time with Finlay in a heartbeat. So That's how I went about learning Gaelic. But I've got one more thing to tell you. I promised you that you could start learning Gaelic today in a fun way, no matter where you are in the world, and you can. In a moment, that video that I promised about the fall of Clan MacGregor will be here on the screen. But remember that American Gaelic teacher that I met on Islay? He's now back in America, but the white tab up there will take you to his YouTube channel where you can start learning Gaelic with Jason right now. Tell him that I sent you and to turn that guitar down. There are links for all the things that I've mentioned in the description below. In the meantime, here's the story of the Battle of Glenfruin. How many dochas can be lamb alive? Cheering Rasta.